Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, April 16th, 2021, and today I'm going to be talking about Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, the reason why I want to bring her up in today's discussion is because she is now forming this America First caucus, something that is new to the American House of Representatives, and just looking at her as a candidate or person or representative, there's a lot to unpack for Marjorie Taylor Greene. And if you're on the East Coast, which I'm sure many of my viewers are, I apologize for how late this video is getting out. I'm currently in California, so I'm working 3 hours behind where I normally would be. I got here today, just got off the flight not even an hour ago, so it's been a little bit since I've been making videos. I made one really early in the morning and scheduled it to be released around 3 p.m. Eastern time. So I apologize for this coming out really late. I'm going to try to fix it ahead of the next few days that I'm here, and then I'll be back on the East Coast and we will see. But looking at this article here, it did not come as a surprise to me. When I saw this reported, I was not in any sense shocked. This is something that we largely expected to occur because of President Trump's continuous presence on the American political system, even after leaving office. Marjorie Taylor Greene is launching this America First caucus. She's looking to get members that are deemed to be far right or just those who are vehemently pro-Trump and trying to bring them into a caucus so they can have a heavy-set influence on the Republican Party in the House of Representatives and potentially a large amount of influence on the 2022 majority if the Republican Party can win it then. And looking at this caucus, it's pretty interesting what they try to tout here. It's pretty much just conspiracy theories, starting off with the baseless claims of election fraud. When you look at the American First Caucus policy platform, I'm going to open it up here actually in full screen so you can read it with me. We're not going to go through every single line, but we certainly are going to be discussing it. So let's see here. I'm not logged in, so I don't know if it's going to show me the entire thing, but you can see here that essentially, they are just trying to go through whatever President Trump did. It says here that as this applies a degree of ideological flexibility, a certain intellectual boldness is needed amongst the members of the AFC to follow in President Trump's footsteps. So essentially, Trump is the blueprint. The first thing they talk about is election fraud. They say that they support a nationwide systemic electoral reform. Mail-in voting, long recognized as subject to fraud, false, has become normalized. We will work towards end to mail-in voting. I don't know why. That's insane to think about. Implementation of national voter ID disenfranchises minority groups, and substantive investigations into mass voter fraud perpetuated in the 2020 election. False. So this entire caucus here is built on the idea that there's some mass amount of people opposed to President Trump, and a number of missteps from former administrations, and targeting the Chinese Communist Party as a major point of their caucus is something that I found to be very interesting, but very much on tone, on key here for Marjorie Taylor Greene and surrounding Republicans. I'm not surprised to see this as a formation of a new political caucus, but I think it comes as a direct response to President Trump. As I said in the beginning of this video, when Ted Cruz spoke at CPAC and said that President Trump ain't going anywhere, he wasn't wrong. He wasn't lying to the Republican Party when he said that. President Trump is here to stay. In fact, he's now selling merchandise again. He halted selling merchandise after losing the 2020 election and has now started back up. All of this money that's made here will go directly into the Save America PAC. It's not the Make America Great Again PAC. It's not the President Trump re-election PAC. This is Save America, which is essentially code for President Trump exerting his influence into certain states, certain congressional districts to have pro-Trump nominees on the GOP side that will eventually win. Because Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't come from a competitive district. She won over 70% of the vote in 2020. She is not in a swing district. She has no Democrats really to appease or that she even cares about. Because at the end of the day, she will be fine wherever she runs because she's in a safe area. What this America First caucus is targeting are far-right politicians in safe GOP districts. So if you're thinking that the Democratic Party might see this as an automatic target list, you're probably not right about that, because the Democrats aren't going to at least for their sake, waste that much money. They have made missteps in the past with Amy McGrath, potentially with Marjorie Taylor Greene with that Democratic opponent, because there's no chance in heck that she loses. But looking at this America First caucus, while it might ordinarily bring about the label of, or bring about an easy target list for the Democratic Party, most of the people that will be joining this aren't going to be in competitive districts. But President Trump is exerting his influence, and that's exactly what is being told to us. Within the second paragraph of this entire platform, President Trump is mentioned. He's here to stay. Ted Cruz said it. Donald Trump said it. Kimberly Guilfoyle said it. Everybody said it. And we believe them, as we should be believing them, because President Trump is going to be fundraising. President Trump is going to be outspoken. He is going to be endorsing candidates. He's already sent out some endorsements through his Save America PAC and sending out press releases on a website, 45office.com. It's essentially just a highlight and a new media source for pro-Trump Republicans to hear directly from the president, who has been cut off from many forms of social media because of his claims of election fraud, because of an incitement of insurrection, whatever it might be. President Trump has been limited in the way that he can speak to his supporters and is now resorting to his own website and resorting to a brand new one spent mainly there to highlight the achievements of his presidency. And I think we are going to see him come out in full force with this caucus formation. I think this is the start of the next few years of it going to be somehow President Trump dominating the political news cycle without being in office. President Trump is going to have such a heavy influence despite being very unpopular leaving office. I really don't understand the GOP's infatuation with the guy, except for the fact that he did cultivate this base, but it's time to move on. We know it's time to move on. Many Republicans do as well. But his approval rating amongst Republicans hasn't wavered as much as you might think. Following the Capitol insurrection, amongst Republicans, let's see here if we can go ahead and just adjust it to simply just Republicans here. I don't know if it's going to actually load in here. I'm going to refresh the page so I can show you. But if you go ahead and look by Republican, across the country, you don't really see a large amount of Republicans disapproving of Trump. Sure, it's higher than where it was after the Capitol insurrection, but there's not a single state where the majority of the Republican Party is disapproving of Donald Trump, which makes sense, but also is worrisome. Because while there may be 20 to 25% of the party that says, okay, it's time to move on, as long as the majority of the party, or really the plurality of the party, wants to remain with Trump, he could run in 2024 and win that nomination, or could hold a heavy amount of influence on the 2022 election results. Because I really do expect him to be sending out messages through these representatives. And I think this also goes to speak on the Republican Party's reluctance to drop this far-right platform that we have seen adopted by Marjorie Taylor Greene, by Lauren Boebert. I mean, just looking at the list of Republicans that have been a firm supporter of President Trump, including Matt Gaetz and other Republicans, this really goes to show that the GOP not only is going to be the party of Trump, but is going to be much more right-wing than where they should be going in order to appeal to the masses, in order to appeal to those voters that crossed over from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. The GOP seems to be taking more and more steps to the right rather than moving towards the center and moving towards the left in order to win over more of the electorate. And I know it may seem as if the GOP has gotten more to the right, but in comparison to where they stood 20 years ago, they've certainly gotten more left-wing. If you compare the Democratic Party in 2008, you could see a lot of policy crossover with the Republican Party of today. Both parties have been shifting to the left. They've been responding to the increase in minority vote. Minority voters generally vote for the Democratic Party. And if the Democratic Party is moving to the left and you want to appeal to the demographic group and take away some of those Democratic voters, you're going to need a platform that can appeal to them. Yes, Donald Trump has been more outspoken than previous Republicans and hasn't really been that reassuring voice the same way Romney was or McCain was or even Pence was. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Donald Trump was the most right-wing candidate of the 21st century. In many ways, he was not. But Marjorie Taylor Greene is taking the more extreme portions of Trump's platform and Trump's legacy and trying to form it into a House caucus, trying to form this into a set number of Republican representatives that can turn their backs on the GOP in an already narrow House majority. Because looking at the 2020 House results, the Democratic Party has had the narrowest majority of either party since 2003. And I'm sure that the Democratic Party is worried about that. I'm sure they are looking at that and saying, we really could be at a bad point. But also the GOP is looking at that and saying, if we truly want to oppose things, they are going to need a few crossover votes from Democrats and every single Republican vote. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene and her new, I don't even want to call it the squad because it's not what they're called, but her new squad decides to defy the GOP simply because they want the platform to be more right-wing or they want to hold pressure on certain things, whatever it might be. They have the votes that they can hold up an entire opposition vote, and consequently the Democratic Party can end up doing better, despite losing some of the Democrats in a very narrow House majority. I mean, not nearly as narrow as it is in the Senate, because the Senate does come down to every single vote, but the House is almost there. The House is almost down to every single vote. But this is going to probably last well beyond Donald Trump. Looking at this platform, I'm really not surprised to see that election integrity is right up there, or election fraud, as they put it. When you look through, it seems as if this is just a combination of conspiracy theories. They start to talk about big tech, Silicon Valley tech firms, saying that the treasure trove of data they have collected from Americans have given them powers that would make the Soviet dictator blush. I think looking at what the America First Caucus is really trying to do is make the American public, and specifically the Republican Party, in opposition to many major tech firms, to the Democratic Party's bills to expand voting rights, to voting laws that allow mail-in voting. I mean, just looking at the policies here, they seem very far-fetched and very interesting. So let's see here. You know, they talk about the coronavirus. They say these guidelines, which includes mask mandates and social distancing, are socially conditioning the culture and behavior of Americans. I don't need to remind you that these are anti-maskers, that these are people that deny the very real threat of COVID-19. This America First Caucus is probably the most right-wing you can find in the GOP. And it's alarming that recognizable Republican names are joining. But the thing is, these Republicans that are recognizable, such as Marjorie Taylor Greene or Matt Gaetz, are not recognizable for good reasons. When you're looking at the number of Republicans that will potentially join this, almost all of them are infamous. Not liked by the Democratic Party, certainly, not by independents, and only are narrowly approved of by the GOP. Marjorie Taylor Greene is the perfect example. And while some people in the media have compared her to the like of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I don't think that's the right comparison. That's a false equivalency. AOC is not nearly as far left as Marjorie Taylor Greene is far right. The comparison is Medicare for all versus COVID-19 isn't real. The comparison is a Green New Deal versus election fraud in the 2020 election. You shouldn't be making that comparison. I'm not going to be making that comparison. But I think that what the squad did in terms of holding a lot of political power despite being a very small portion of the Democratic Party's House composition is exactly what Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to replicate here. But the thing that I am personally worried about for the GOP, for their chances of seeming to be a party of returning to conservatism, a party returning to the era before Donald Trump, the thing is, I really do believe there will be many more people joining this America First Caucus simply because they want to reflect Donald Trump's wishes. It was no surprise that the majority of GOP members voted to oppose the certification of certain states. That was not the case in the Senate. The House holds much more far-right individuals because they come from districts that can be drawn in such a way where it doesn't matter what they believe or what they do, as long as it's in the favor of President Trump and the GOP, they will be fine. The same can't be said for most senators. The only ones that will really get a pass in that instance are maybe senators from Wyoming or Idaho or North and South Dakota, where the electorate is plus 30 for the GOP. But looking at a number of states where we have some of these more outspoken representatives, for example, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who comes from Georgia, She's not going to be in a competitive position, but a senator absolutely would be, or a governor absolutely would be, or it absolutely would be on the presidential level. So this America First Caucus, I think this is a very dangerous pathway for the GOP. It's only going to continue a failed legacy of President Trump in terms of election victories, and it's honestly going to hinder their chances in 2022. But I really think that this America First Caucus is highlighting President Trump's influence to the fullest extent, and it's now extending into the House of Representatives as we completely expected. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my 2022 midterm election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.